John Kovach, GardenStateHSWrestling.com. We are at St. Joseph High School in Metuchen, New Jersey. We are at the Garden State Wrestling Prospect Camp with Tristan Bundy. And Tristan, who grew up really not too far from here in Scotch Plains, is part of the growth of women's wrestling as a sport in a position he has now at Andrew College in Georgia. Tristan, tell us about how you progressed from Scotch Plains through college to now leading what's going to be a brand new wrestling program in what's really a relatively new sport.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Scotch Plains, New Jersey, and I actually wasn't recruited coming out of high school. I went 0-1 at the state tournament after having a pretty good senior year, and I was lost. And but the one thing that I had was peak wrestling and Wally Muhammad at St. Benedict's. And one day, Patrick Hunter walks in from South Plainfield, and Patrick Hunter was the first person that I ever wrestled in a scrimmage at South Plainfield. And I remember he asked me, he's like, "What are you doing with your life?" And I was like, "Nothing." And then Wally goes, "Pat, help him. He wants to wrestle in college." And then Pat makes a phone call to his coach. He gives me his coach's number about 2 weeks later. And then the last weekend in July in 2011, I called Luke Moffitt up from Iowa Central, and he told me, I want people who want to be here." And 2 weeks, I got all my stuff in. 2 weeks before school started, I told my parents I was moving to Iowa, and I went there, and they said, "All right, go do it." And then there were 7 25-pounders, 6 or 7, and I was like 3 or 4. And then the following year, I was the starter. And then that same season, I became an All-American for the first time in my life. Super proud moment. And from there, I ended up transferring to Grandview University. And I was a national qualifier there. And then I had an opportunity to work a summer job in Southern California. And one of my brothers, I have 4 of them, but one of them was living in the Bay Area in Santa Clara. And he was like, "Why don't you come up here and check out Silicon Valley?" So I did. And I'm working all these different types of jobs. And then I meet a young woman named Bianca Risby. She was the assistant coach at Menlo College at the time. And I remember she told me, she's like, "I think you should meet the head coach. You like remind me of him like a lot. I feel like you guys would talk a lot." And that summer of 2018, I joined the program, and that year, we ended up, winning 2 national titles within 6 weeks. And we won the WCWA, the NAIA, which was the first year they were doing that. And then the following year, we won national duels. Using this momentum, we get to North Dakota for nationals, and then COVID hits. So, hey man, it was tough, but we got through it, and there was a lot of good experiences there. And from there, I had an opportunity to meet or to get my master's. So the head coach of Life University in Georgia, Omi Acosta, he calls me up, and he's like, "Hey man, like what's going on? Like, what are you up to? And he had a grad assistant position open. So I moved to Georgia September of 2 days after Labor Day of September 2023. And then I got my master's in 13 months. And on the last night, same night I submitted my last assignment for grad school, was the night that the athletic director offered me the job at Andrew College. And here I am.
This is a brand new program?
Yes, it is. I started January 5th, and I've signed 18 girls, and which I feel really good about, because I've asked a lot of coaches who have top programs in the country, what do they think the average first-year women's program is? And pretty much they all said the same thing. They said between 6 and 10 girls. They said some have 12. If you're really working, you got 15. So me being at 18 is something I feel good at, but I know my athletic director wants more. So
Good spread of weight classes?
I have 8 out of the 10 weight classes. The 2 that I don't have is, 180 and then 207. Those are a little bit harder to come by.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'll be on the lookout. Those are priorities for the next year.
Now you're back in your old stomping ground where you
Yeah.
went to high school. You're not that far away.
Yeah.
What do you see in terms of prospects here at the Garden State?
Man, it feels so good being back in Jersey. I knew that I was back home when we set up the mats. So we didn't have too many people setting up the mats. And one of the things I had there's a coach in Florida, Miami, Florida, who's originally from Jersey. And he told me, I asked him like, "Hey man, what do you think the one thing is about that tri-state area that makes it that and everything else?" And he was like, "It's just a work ethic." And I thought about that when we were setting up the mats because we had like 10, 11 people set up 5 mats in 42 minutes. And, one mat has 7 strips. So you're averaging 8 minutes a mat, 7 strips. You're moving.
You're moving.
And, when we got it done, I just looked around and I was just like, that's just what it's about. This is what I remember, kids hustling to just set up these mats, right? And that just goes into that work ethic. So I'm watching, the girls, and I've wrestled, with a couple girls. I had a couple come up to me and say, "Hey, let's wrestle." And I can't like play with them. They're not like kids, you know what I mean? Like you have to try because if you don't, you might get hurt.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, yesterday I had a girl try to 5 me. She went for it too. I remember she went for it. And one of the coach was like, "You better 5 him." And I was like, "Oh, no way." But it was so cool. It was just so cool being back here. And especially just because, being in California where women's wrestling is so developed over there. But coming here, I'm like, nah, Jersey is coming up very quick. And I anticipate that it's not going to be too long between East Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania overall, and New Jersey and New York, where they're going to be competing and having lots of All-Americans on the collegiate level.
Are you looking for work ethic more than anything when you're at a clinic like this and watching the campers?
I'm looking for a couple things. I'm looking first when whoever the clinician is, and they're showing what we're about to do, I'm looking at who's really watching intentionally. Um, I'm looking at when they're doing the reps, how do they look when they do the reps? I think Kyle Snyder said 1 lazy rep is too many. And it's really important to be intentional about drilling because when you're learning something that you don't necessarily do is not in your style, you have to be really intentional about drilling it and getting the mechanics done so that way your brain understands it to eventually get that muscle memory. But you can't do it casually, right? You have to be really intentional about it and you have to have a good partner. So I'm looking at whatever this move is or this series or sequence, I'm looking at, okay, who's doing the move? And then the partner, do they know their role when it comes to this sequence, right? Because being a good partner is so important. So I'm looking at that. And then when they're wrestling live, I'm just looking at who just competes. I've never seen anybody win a state or a national title in a practice. I have seen a 3-time state champ, 2-time national champ get beat up in practice, but it's just practice, So I just want to see people compete because chances are how hard you compete in wrestling, I bet in other aspects of your life, you compete as well. And I think that's really important just because I tell a lot of recruits, regardless of whether wrestling is in or out of your life, you're going to have to compete anyway. You're going to have to compete for that job, that grant that you want to get. You're going to have to compete for that manager position. You're going to have to compete for your spot. You're going to have to compete for everything, So at a certain point in time, you're going to realize that there's people who are just competitive by nature. And as a coach, you want those people because it's something that I really can't teach you.
How many all-female clinic camps have you seen in the time since you've started working with women's wrestling?
Man, I'd say I've seen more in California just because that's where I got my start. And then I've been doing a bunch of camps this summer, but not too many have been all females. But to see what I saw today and those numbers, I think the thing that I like the most about it is the level was pretty consistent. And when I do camps, sometimes the coach will ask me, "Do you want to make it just high school?" And I'm like, "No, it's not about age. It's about your level." Because I've seen a girl that was a fifth grader, and when she's wrestling and drilling, she's looking just like a varsity athlete. She's just 9, 10, right? So when I was looking across the board, I'm like, Jersey really is well on its way. And to see and to be a part of this for 2 days, I hope I get to come back. I feel like I made a good impression, with the girls, and you know, it makes me feel good about being in this sport.
Tristan Bundy, thank you so much. Good luck at Andrew. We'll
Thank
be
you.
looking to follow you,
Yeah,
and then hopefully we see you back up here in your home state.
I hope so too. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us on GardenStateHSWrestling.com.